Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. As an elite level runner and coach, I'm excited to introduce you to the All In Running Club. The All In Running Club exists to help you become a better runner. Whether you're a beginner, an elite runner, or anywhere in between, the mission of the All In Running Club is to give you the tools you need to find your success in running. Join today to take advantage of the 75% off yearly membership rate offer. Click the link below in the show notes to learn more. So thank you, Matthew, for being a guest again on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jerry.
So, you reached out that you've got a new product, and obviously I know that your passion, you and your wife, your passion is health. Your passion is helping people deal with health. And the webe kälm is something that's going after the stress and anxiety levels that people are dealing with that right now are probably higher than they ever have been.
Yeah, it's really been a challenge. We've put our bodies into this constant state of fight or flight, right? Or freeze. And we don't have many tools for getting ourselves out of that state. Yeah. It's actually an active process going from fight, flight to sort of rest and digest. And what we know is that breathing and a certain way of breathing is a fantastic, powerful way to get you out of that fight, flight, freeze physiological state. And that's what we had in mind when we were designing this.
And so, well, you mentioned something that I think a lot of people forget, because a lot of people hear and have probably known that, like, okay, we're in this state too much. We're in the fight, flight, or freeze too much. But the opposite side of that is it's rest. But I think a lot of people don't understand that it's the digest piece and like how much that impacts our health by not allowing ourselves to rest and digest properly.
Right, exactly. Right. We need signals going from our vagus nerve, traveling through our vagus nerve, that go down into our gut and basically say the coast is clear, everything's fine, digestion can keep going, right? Can turn back on. When you're going to fight or flee or freeze, you sort of pull off that brake or that signal. So you stop putting energy into digestion. It stops, your gut essentially stops working effectively, so that you can fight and flee and do all those other things. So you need this messaging, and it's not something that you can just send once and you're done. It's got to be this constant flow, this constant feedback, because that's how your body works. It's these feedback loops. So the cell, they all require this feedback that's constantly going. You're safe, 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 you're safe. Right? It's got to be doing that. And then it's like, oh my God, tiger. So now you stop saying you're safe, you fight the tiger. Yeah. Tiger's gone. And then it's supposed to go back. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. Right. So that's what needs to happen. And we don't do that. And it's to learn how to do this. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe. So it's something that we have to train our bodies to do. Right. And it's a learned, and it is really essentially feels like a muscle that you can strengthen.
Well, and like you say, learned. And it's one of the things that, I think about, like 100 years ago, and before, a lot of the technology that we have now, before TV, before stuff that you could sit and consume with your eyes. You think about stories of people that lived back then, and they sat on their porch in the evening, watched the sunset, maybe converse with their spouse or with their neighbor. But, a lot of times they just sat on the porch and just sat there and rocked. Right. And that stress relieving piece of, like, we don't do that anymore. But like people say, okay, well, but I sit on the couch and I don't do anything, but you're consuming, and that input is constantly driving your brain, right?
Right. And if you're, depending on what you're watching, it could be putting you into that fight or flight response. If you're watching, which most shows have a good guy and a bad guy, and the good guy has to beat up the bad guy, right? That's mobilizing you. Your body is going into that threat physiology. You're living through that experience, right?
Right.
So, and it is different versus connecting or just letting your sort of look outside at nature is a very different experience than watching a story unfold that is
Right.
likely has some level of dramatic arc that's going to be stimulating to you.
Right.
So TV is distracting, but it's not calming
Right.
for in many cases in the way that we're talking about,
Right.
right? So it can get you out of some of the discomfort by distraction. But what you're talking about is really, and that's what I've been doing. For example, at night, I'll sit and light a candle, and you can have a fireplace, or you can have a fireplace going with music, calming
Hmm.
music. On
Right.
YouTube even has those, and they can be going. So there's ways to start giving yourself these messages of safety, and
Hmm.
that's I think of them as nutrients. But instead
Right.
of physical nutrients like food, I think of them as emotional nutrients,
Right.
right? So you want to have nutrients in your food multiple times a day. I want you to have nutrients of, these emotional nutrients of safety coming into your body, and they come in through your eyes and your ears and
Hmm.
even your nose, right? If I'm smelling a certain scent, it can be off-putting and
Right.
stimulating, or it can be very calming,
Yeah.
right? So you want to get all that's how it's called neuroception. That's it's the word for sort of absorbing your environment and assessing how much threat there is. And what
Yeah.
we want to do is basically put ourselves in a world where our neuroception is saying we are very safe. And then you get those messages to your gut, you get
Hmm.
those messages to the rest of your body. That's what allows you to sleep, right?
Yeah.
It affects your health in all those ways.
Right. Um, and so for somebody that's overstimulated, that's in a lot of, like you said, sleep, like a lot of sleep issues are overstimulation issues. And to a point of whether you're on your phone in your bed, or you've consumed with something that's happened and you can't relax enough to go to sleep. And the thought process of, oh, you're worried about somebody in the family or your job or something, and you're in that, that side of the fear, and like, what am I going to do when what you really need to do is go to sleep for your health and deal with it in the morning, because not much changes overnight because everybody else is
Right.
sleeping that's involved in the process. Um,
Right.
and so breathing, and I breath work has gotten a lot of attention in the past couple of years, and but breathing in a certain way, like it's not just, okay, well, I'm breathing, so I should be calm. Like there's a
Right.
system to it, right, that makes it
Right.
actually work.
Exactly. So, at night, most people, when they can't sleep, assuming they don't have like obstructive issues, right, where
Hmm.
they need, right, let's say their air pathways are all open, it's going to be a dysregulation issue, or at
Hmm.
least a factor.
Right.
So one of and just telling someone to calm down, it does the opposite of calming them down,
Right.
right? And telling
Right.
yourself to calm down, or trying to logic your way out of it. What's wrong with you? Why can't you
Hmm.
just calm? So there's things you can do during the day. So for example, when I use the webe calm, I'll use it every hour, like before a meeting or at the end of a meeting.
Hmm.
Um, it takes 10 to 20 seconds, right? 30 seconds, maybe, depending on how many times you do it. And that's sort of building up that savings account. So if I get that savings account of lots of calming messages throughout the day, that's going to help me at night when it's time to sleep. You can't work all day like you're putting out bombs, fires and,
Hmm.
and disarming bombs, and expect to be able to fall asleep just because you take a couple of breaths,
Right.
right? So there's some hygiene, if you will, during the day.
Hmm.
But then at night, there's also things that you can do so that when you're struggling, right, you can do these breathing exercises, and the WeBecom that we have has three parts to it,
Hmm.
right? There's the WeBecom, which has the device, the breathing tube,
Okay.
and then there's the attachment that is the indicator. And when you blow out, it decreases airflow, so that if you could to blow at a comfortable sort of force, you
Hmm.
have to blow out slowly,
Okay.
so it prolongs your exhalation.
Right.
That's one of the most powerful ways of stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, and is calming and sort of sends those safety signals,
Mhm.
right? The other is the ball is held aloft. So for you to blow out, right, it keeps the ball aloft. And that
Okay.
helps kids as well as adults. So that I know that as long as I'm keeping a flow of exhale, I'm holding the ball up. And we tell people to try and hold the ball up, kids to try and hold the ball up based on their age. So if you're 7 years old, hold the ball up for 7 seconds,
Okay.
up to 10, right? And
Right.
anybody over 10, you sort of cap off at 10. And the
Okay.
third is there's white noise that's produced at the with
Mm.
the exhalation, and that provides some auditory regulation. So there's three parts. There's the prolonged exhalation, there's the focused attention on keeping the ball aloft,
Mhm.
and there's the auditory regulation. And all three of those happen during the exhalation.
Okay.
And that's the process. All of those are help stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system to calm your body down.
And so, and it's the exhale piece is more important than the inhale piece,
Right. So
right?
it's exhalation, and particularly prolonged or slow exhalation, that is uh, associated with stimulating the parasympathetics.
Okay. And I think most people would know, like, because when you get into that super excited state, whether it's from a fear or an excitement, like, but in your breathing, and you're just like, you're almost hyperventilating. You just like, and you can't control it. You're, whether you've been sobbing or whatever. And, I think everybody who's been in that position, somebody has said, just breathe, right? Like slow your breathing down. Just
Right.
take a deep breath, right? And but like you're saying, it's more than just a one time. Like it doing it once is great, but it's not necessarily going to do a lot to calm the entire system.
Well, it will. So kids can, when they're losing their basket,
Hmm.
or an adult who's feeling really anxious, just like I was telling you before we got on about my daughter, right? You can use it and you can do 5 exhalations and you'll
Hmm.
notice a difference.
Okay.
And in fact, there'll be kids that will say, I'm fine, I'm not dysregulated, I'm not worked up. And then they'll try and hold the ball up. And normally, when they're calm, they can hold the ball up for 10 seconds.
Hmm.
But when they first do it, they can only hold it up for 3 or 4. So
Mm.
it also gives them feedback that, oh, wait a second, I'm actually not calm.
Right.
And then they'll do it a couple of times. And then they'll be able to hold it for 10 seconds. And that's a
Okay.
sign that their body and their physiology is shifting.
Right.
So it gives you that feedback as well. And that's really, really helpful. So yeah,
Okay.
and it's you can give a kid that, this has happened. In fact, that's what got one of our partners really excited to jump in full time on board with
Hmm.
us, is that he started using it with his family.
Right.
And he said his kids would go from a flip lid to being able to have a conversation that they can connect around through using this device.
Yeah.
And he said, it's just a matter of educating people because it's really not out there right now.
Hmm.
So helping people understand, and it's not like a pacifier that you shove in their mouth. It's
Right.
that you work with them to support them and say, hey, would this be helpful? Would you like to try something that's really helped me? And sometimes my kids will tell me, hey, Dad, you need the We Become too.
Right.
And they'll say, Dad, you're getting a little tense here. Would you enjoy trying a couple of breaths? And I'll say, oh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let me
Hmm.
let me give it a couple of breaths here.
Um, and like you mentioned earlier, like you can use it multiple times a day. So it's not something that's just you know, there's no regulation as to how many times you can use it.
Yeah, yeah. The more you use it, the more your body builds that neural pathway around calm.
Hmm.
So if someone can someone can use it and very quickly, remember I said that there's sort of this fight flight,
Hmm.
fight the tiger, and then you sort of say, okay, well, coast is clear, and you turn on this safety brake and say, okay, now we can rest and digest and
Right.
reproduce, right? The ability to do that quickly and effectively is basically how much you've trained this neural pathways, and how much you've built that muscle up.
Yeah.
So by doing it, every hour, at the end, after a couple of days of doing that, your body's going to be really starting to fine tune and be very quick to turn on those calming pathways,
Right.
right? Imagine someone meditating and they meditated the first time versus they've been meditating twice a day for 6 months.
Right.
Their ability to go into mindfulness is different. Similarly, here, if you keep doing it, and kids will start, that's what we found is that kids start really building up that muscle memory to the
Mhm.
point that they'll go and grab the webe calm on their own. So they start, it's called interoception, where they're able to identify what's going on inside of them, how they're feeling, and what they're needing.
Right.
And that ability to identify what's going on inside of them allows them to say, oh, wait a second, I'm a little worked up here. And I have it, I know what to do, and I know what calm feels like. And
Right.
teaching them that is really important.
Yeah.
It's a really valuable skill to take into adulthood.
Well, because so many of us get into situations as adults where the stress level just can increase in a split second, right? Whether
Right.
it's a traffic issue, or you get called into your boss's office and all of a sudden like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting this, and when you're making decisions in that state, you typically make rash decisions, right?
Right.
You're not you're not necessarily gathering all the information and going, okay, this is the best thing for what I need to do. It's like, it's the fight or flight, save my life, even though it's not a life-threatening situation. But that's the decision-making process goes there.
Right. Exactly. And because we have sort of most people don't have a lot of experience stimulating calm or tools to do that.
Mhm.
They focus on making the stimulus that's upsetting go away,
Yeah,
right? Versus trying to calm yourself so you can figure out how best to address whatever's stimulating you,
right,
right? So I like to be able to calm myself, assuming it's not a tiger, right? I
right.
don't want you to start doing your breathing when there's a tiger in front of you.
Yeah,
But
right.
most of the time we're reacting and it's not a tiger,
Yeah.
right? So even with parenting, right? And we do a lot of parenting support on the
Mhm.
website, right? And most of the time it would actually not only be better for the kids and for you, but it would teach the kids, hey, this is not an emergency. We have time to react in a
Right.
way that's very connecting and calm here.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, oh my God, what is that? How to make, I got to fix it. Got to make it go away. You're teaching the kids that this is urgent. So even though
Mhm.
we don't want the kids to act like everything is urgent, we're responding as if it was. So we're giving them mixed messages,
Right.
right? So when the potatoes are touching the broccoli and the kid loses their basket, and then you
Mhm.
quickly go trying to fix it because you want to stop the stimulus, which is their crying,
Yeah.
you're teaching them that, hey, this is like an urgent thing. Look how fast mom or dad are moving to try and separate the broccoli from the potatoes.
Right.
But instead, but that's because we don't know what else to do with that irritating stimulus.
Mhm.
But if we learn to say, oh, I can take a breath here, I know what to do, and I've practiced it. So when I do the breathing, I automatically feel calm in my body. Then I can say very connected,
Yeah.
oh, it sounds like you're really upset here. You don't like when the potatoes touch the broccoli.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But you see how I'm going to have a completely different affect. But number
Right.
one, I'm going to be able to calm my body because it's not tigers,
Mhm.
it's potatoes touching broccoli.
Yeah.
Right. But my body
Right.
reacts the same sometimes when my kid starts screaming.
Yeah.
And I get that same physiological shift of sympathetics going,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's the tiger or the broccoli causing the screaming. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Oh
I
yeah.
think learning that skill is so valuable on so many fronts, whether it's your kid screaming, your boss yelling at your work, or your inner critic
Yeah.
yelling at you around how you're, let's say, navigating a food craving or how you
Yeah.
navigated a food craving. All right, to me, regulation serves a purpose in all these cases.
Well, and one of the things you said is and I tell this to the athletes that I coach is, when you're getting into a competition, like, it's common to feel like nerves, right? You're getting ready to start, whether it's a football game or a race or whatever it is, like right before the gun goes off, like you're going to be nervous because, like, oh, am I prepared? Am I doing all these? But the physiological response from nervousness and extreme excitement are like almost the same. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if you just tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited, you're taking more control over the situation. Because if you're nervous and you start going, oh, I wonder if I'm gonna make a mistake, if I'm gonna,
Right.
and then you go down that negative loop versus like, okay, I can be excited about it. And it seems like it's the same type of idea of like, I can deal with the stimulus, but if I know how to control it, then if I know how to control myself, I can calm
Right.
myself and approach it. And the way you approached it with that, with, how do you talk to your kid about it? And it's like, oh, well, I hear you don't like the broccoli touching the potatoes. That's far different that's going to get a far different response from the kid than if you yell, okay, let me separate them. Let me separate them. Like,
Right.
you know,
Do you see how your body, even right there, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm like, ooh, I'm like, I jolted back and I'm like, oh my
right.
God, this is a big deal, right? I thought it was a big
Yeah.
deal. And my parents are confirming it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Versus before, it's like, hey, this matters.
Mhm.
But, and I'm not going to, and that's one of the things I always tell people is don't try your best to not let other people determine your emotional state.
Right.
Right. So I want to be in charge of, and I'm going to, and one of the ways to really become an advocate for yourself is to build this muscle around self-regulation and
Mhm.
breathing, especially and the pieces that we put together at the We Become is a very powerful way and easy way to
Mhm.
build it. So I have one by my desk, I have one by my bed, and I have one in my car.
Yeah.
And I'm just, whenever I think of it, I'm taking 5 breaths on the We Become. And I'm just basically saying, hey, oh, more nutrients, more emotional
Right.
nutrients, more
Right.
calming muscles are being formed, more neural pathways are being developed. Go, Matthew, right? I'm
Right.
just sort of, but that's, and I think that you also, as an athlete, your ability to regulate and then turn on the
Mhm.
sympathetics for the activity, right? So
Right.
when the gun goes off, boom. But I think your whole body, it being regulated before that and
Mhm.
being able to visualize what you're going to do and show up in that calm, to me it's that peaceful and alert, sort of that alert
Right.
and feeling peaceful, right? Can you do
Yep.
both together?
Yeah.
Right, that's the state I think that we're most effective in.
Mhm.
And then afterwards I want to turn the parasympathetics back on so that I can not only I can recover and rest or
Right.
sleep better.
Right.
So it's that balance. It's not that sympathetics are bad and parasympathetics are good. It's that they both have a place. And right
Right.
now we're way heavy on sympathetic activation, and our muscle to turn on the parasympathetic is not strong enough.
Yeah. And so, and I love from looking at the website, like you provide a lot of information about anxiety in kids and dealing with different emotional issues that, you know, in my mind, looking through it, I was like, I need to have you on to talk about this because it's not a pharmaceutical,
Right.
right? It's not just throw something at them and just hope that we can block whatever's causing it internally. But like this is, like you said, it's teaching those pathways, it's teaching the regulation so that your body can adjust and go, oh, okay, I understand. And then I'm assuming that, okay, well, once you get to where you can actually calm yourself, now we can start to determine what are the triggers, what's setting you off.
Right. And regulated, this is something that I found fascinating, is that regulated children naturally will choose pro-social behaviors more often.
Oh,
In other words, instead of just focusing on the behavior you want, focus on regulating the nervous system, and the behavior will naturally follow.
right.
And it doesn't mean you don't coach and support,
Sure.
but trying to focus on the behavior with a dysregulated child and threatening or punishing or
Mhm.
scaring a child into doing the behavior you want is, as most parents will realize, is an exercise in futility. And
Yeah.
even if you get them to do the activity that you want or the behavior that you want in the moment, they're most likely doing it out of the submission rebellion paradigm,
Mhm.
and they're submitting to your authority. And eventually you're going to pay the price for that in the
Right.
teenage years.
Right.
So to me, it's not like you have two good options to choose between.
Mhm.
You have this option that I think is far from ideal, and then you have this choice to regulate and support them and then be able to connect with them. And what
Right.
we find is that you can, when you breathe and you do it with the child and you're there counting, like I was doing with my daughter, I would count the breath as she was exhaling. I would count to 10 because she wanted to
Mhm.
hold it for 10 seconds. We're connecting, and that's the fourth
Right.
pathway, which is co-regulation. And I'm supporting her with my affect, with my facial expressions, with the prosody of my voice, the tone, the pace,
Mhm.
the words I'm using. And that is all supporting her as well. And you
Right.
put that all together and you create this really, really powerful ability to connect that is very hard to do when they're dysregulated.
Yeah. And So both of my kids are adopted, and I remember going through some training early on about regulation and dysregulation and dealing with, because it does tend to show up more in kids that are adopted, whether they're infants or not. And both of ours were infants. And one of our kids uh, definitely has more issues being able to regulate himself. Um, but one of when you were just talking, it reminded me of the picture that they showed of two windows, and one's open almost all the way, and it's signifying that they're good regulation. They're calm, everything's good. And so there's a lot of you want the window open, so there's a lot of way to communicate back and forth. Um, and then the dysregulated child, the window's almost completely shut, and you're trying to communicate and get things through that window.
Mhm.
And like there's very little room for them before they just completely shut it off.
I
And
love that.
the idea is, how do we get the window back open? Not how do we get more stuff through it? It's how do we
Exactly.
open the window?
Exactly. I love that visual. It's right on, and it's so easy to understand when you say it that way,
Mhm.
right? Like, and so many people are like, "How do we squeeze as much?" They think the window is sort of fixed. They don't
Right,
realize it's a window that opens and closes.
right.
And then even if they realize it's a window that opens and closes, they don't have a tool to help the kids
Yeah,
open the window.
right.
And that's what was exciting for us, is to say, okay, well, here's a tool, and depending on how you show up with them, you can help them open their window, and then they'll be
Mhm.
ready to connect and care about your needs, especially when you show care for their needs.
Right. And so this is I'm seeing this as a very like necessary tool for a lot of people to help them go from living in such a reactive life to being able to take more control of what's going on in their lives. Not necessarily like being a control freak, like not to that step, but to be able to say, okay, this is what I want to happen, and like let's move towards that. These are my goals, whether it's weight
Right.
loss, whether it's parenting, whether whatever it is like I can see this being something that helps them along that path.
Right. And you can't control the world around you, but you can control the way you react to the world around you.
Right.
And to me, that's the focus. And we have a lot of people that say it's helpful before meals, right? Because it's a couple of things. When you just seeing it there symbolizes a different intention. And
Mhm.
then taking your breaths before you have your meal and saying, how do I want to show up in this meal? Do I want to eat as fast as I can and stuff myself full? Or do I want to eat more mindfully? And what are my intentions around my health and my food?
Mhm.
And can I align? So we find that when people are using this before meals, or when they align their behavior so that they're more congruent with their values and what they're
Mhm.
wanting. And we ask people, before a craving, don't tell yourself you can't give in to the craving. But I'd love for you to tell yourself that you got to do the we become breaths before you decide whether or not you're going to give into the craving.
Mhm.
So that if you're going to give into the craving, you're doing it mindfully
Right.
and out of choice, not reactively.
Right. Because so many of us do. We react to, we don't realize necessarily how close we already are on the stimulation standpoint of like, because of everything else we've had throughout the day,
Right.
which is where I hear you saying like, and it's clicking. It's like, oh, if I do this every hour or every 2 hours throughout the day, I'm slowly chipping away at that level of stress that's continuing to go throughout the day.
Exactly. And that's where it's so important to say, hey, I just want to show up differently. I want to
Mhm.
care for my nervous system, right? My whole day, I never really got support around caring for my nervous system in this way.
Mhm.
And even for people to just talk about it, they didn't give me tangible, doable, clear strategies,
Right.
right? So I talk about smokers, right? And when we tell someone to stop smoking and then give them nicotine gum,
Mhm.
we're really giving them a bad deal there, right?
Right.
Because what we're not replacing is the time every hour they go outside and take 20 deep breaths.
Right.
And sometimes they do it with a community of people. So there's a few
Sure.
other people that they're all talking to. So you're taking away that connection, that community, that friendship. that self-care, the breathing and regulation where you take, I mean, think about it. When people breathe in a cigarette, it's a quick inhale and then it's
Right.
right. And they're doing that 20 times every hour because if not, they feel like junk because of the nicotine withdrawal.
Right.
So I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we created a device that people could go out and say, hey, let's all go do the webe
Hmm.
together. And that's not sort of the marketing message,
Right.
obviously,
Right.
but that's actually what got me thinking about it 2 years ago
Hmm.
was, hey, what can we do to give people that experience?
Right. Well, I mean, when you explain it that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. The things that are happening if you were to take the nicotine in the tar and the stuff out of it, the cigarettes, and it was just simply a breathing tool, like, yeah, people would be like calmer and stress would be away. And that, like you said, that community, because that's another piece of having a healthy life is that community and relationship piece that's added into it.
Exactly. So I would love for people to take the webe, and like I said, you don't even need the it comes off. In fact, that's why we did it. We wanted to have a piece that could just fit in your pocket. It doesn't make
Hmm.
any noise,
Hmm.
right? You can just, right, I'm just blowing on it.
Right.
Imagine I did 20 of those every hour outside with a friend of mine,
Yeah.
right? Hey,
Yeah.
let's go outside and use the webe, right? That would be fantastic. Be
Right.
super healing.
Yeah. No, I could see that, like that. So where did you come up with the name?
Um, webe. We were just coming up with different ways that we thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
Um, at one point we had do but
Mhm.
then the doobie, that
Right.
doesn't sound very good to,
Right.
so we sort of said, okay, well, let's do weebie me. And then we started talking about community and
Hmm.
the weebie community. And we have other things that we want to do, assuming this is successful, so that we
Right.
get the revenue to be able to fund these other projects around supporting kids and families and people around connection, which from when we talked last time is another big piece. And we think
Yeah.
there's regulation of the nervous system before you can connect. So
Right.
to us, both are go hand in hand. You
Yeah.
need to get out of fight or flight so that I feel safe. And then when I feel
Hmm.
safe, or my nervous system tells me I'm safe, I can now connect with you. So
Right.
that everything we're doing is around supporting people's health. And we think regulation and connection are two key components.
Right. When you said that, the vision that flashed in my head was, the safari, you got the animals out there and you got the cheetah or the tiger or the lion or whatever's chasing, the zebra and the gazelle um and the prey goes into the fight or flight and takes off. But as soon as the lion or cheetah either they get somebody or they let up because it's like, I can't get them today. And as soon as they realize that the prey animal goes back to the group, calms, like, and just like goes back to eating grass,
Right.
right? And it's just like this boom.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the vision that I got when you're talking about that. Is like is that, when we're in fight or flight, we're singled out, we're out there by ourselves, we're, you know, running for our lives. But then once we calm down, we go back to the group.
Right. And that actually happens at the cellular level in our bodies. Right. So the cells, if they start experiencing threat
Hmm.
messages and threat physiology sort of stimuli,
Hmm.
they will stop communicating with the group and start preparing to defend.
Hmm.
And then you can sort of shift that back when you start giving them messages of safety again.
Right.
Even at the mitochondrial level, they start to change. And the 8 different types of ATP that get uh, sort of sent out of the cell, depending on whether the cell is in sort of threat physiology or safety physiology, right? There's a big area of research on extracellular ATP
Right.
and how that is working. So it's really fascinating how the whole body is essentially assessing: are we in
Yeah.
threat? Are we safe? And the difference is we have the ability to add on not just physical threat like the tiger,
Hmm.
right? we also have spiritual threat, emotional
Right.
threat, right? Psychological threat.
Right.
And when you get those, they're hard to get away from, right?
Yeah.
If and that's the challenge that people are dealing with now.
Right.
So isolated, we're looking, because of the pandemic, people are already considered, you're unhealthy or you're
Right.
dangerous, you're carrying some kind of disease that you can give to me.
Right.
Some people, their faces are covered. Now we get less message of safety. People are overworked. They're sometimes lacking meaning and purpose in their lives, or often lacking meaning and purpose. So why am I getting up in the morning? They're
Hmm.
irritable. That's communicated in their voice, which puts me into further threat physiology when I hear that type of voice, right?
Yeah.
So you start adding up all of these threat messages, and then you wonder why your body can't calm and relax,
Right.
right? And one of the ways to sort of soothe and um, help soothe the nervous system essentially is swallowing and chewing,
Hmm.
right? So it makes sense that people are like, oh, I'm going to eat something and it helps me calm down.
Right.
But what we want to do is give them another tool for calming so you don't have to use food. But if we just
Right.
tell people stop eating when you're worked up, you shouldn't use
Yeah.
food that way, but you don't give them another tool,
Right.
you're basically saying, well, your need for regulation doesn't matter,
Yeah.
or don't worry about versus no, I want you to meet the need, but let's do a more constructive, more effective, less costly
Right.
strategy, which to me
Right.
would be the we become instead of the junk food.
Right. Well, and because the other piece of that is that the eating, especially the junk food, if you're you go into that piece of like, oh, now I can't believe I just ate that, and why did I go do that? Like why did I eat the pint of ice cream, or what did I do with it? Well, now you've gone back into, you're angry at yourself, you're dealing with all these,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're not at rest and digesting because you flipped it back on.
Exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
you had a very minuscule time period of, okay, I met the need, but then, oh, now I'm reversed it again. And
That's
so yeah,
exactly it.
having a tool like the Weeby Calm where it's going to calm you and allow you to assess where you're at.
Exactly. And I love your point about the self-critical voice
Mhm.
sort of bombarding you with and sort of guilt and shame and anger. All of that shifts your physiology back into the threat state,
Right.
right? So to your point, it's a very ineffective strategy, but it's what people are sort of the habits they've developed.
Right.
That's what they got in their toolbox. So that was something else that motivated us, is that there's no real tools out there to support people in this way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's learned behavior, right? It's learned in I don't know how many times I've heard people say this, is that like, and I'm a firm believer that this is a portion of society that, it's not whether you eat this, that, or the other thing that's bad for you, or that it, where you're, and it's not your genes necessarily as to like determining, are you going to be obese or overweight, but you look at like how you grew up, like the environment that you were in, how did your family deal with issues? And if they went to eating and they went to eating junk food, and that's what you learned, then yeah, the compounding effect of that as you get older is going to lead you down that road.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's a lot of habits that have taken us away from our natural ability to regulate and care for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So so tell us, how can we get We Be Calm?
Yeah. So right now, if you go to webecom.com,
Mhm.
and it's WEBEKALM, so webecom.com, and you can get this if you put in the code wellness to wonderful, the number two wonderful.
Mhm.
So wellness number two wonderful, all one word. You can get a 15% discount
Cool.
on them. They're coming out in January. We'll have our first shipment available to fulfill orders. So it's
Cool.
hot off the press. And yeah, you go there, and there also comes with two bracelets, an adult bracelet. I'm wearing my bracelet. On the bracelet it says "We be in this together," and it
Oh,
comes with
cool.
one for the adult and one for the child. And
Nice.
you with a card that basically explains how it works, and we want you to introduce it to the child and say, "Hey, this is something that helps us calm our bodies. It feels really good. Let's put on these bracelets, and together, when we hold them up, it lets us know that a little gentle reminder, maybe we could benefit from the webe calm. And if you hold yours up, I'll try
Right.
it. And if I hold mine up, will you try it? And we'll see how we feel." But it's this desire to collaborate and work together as a team
Right.
to bring more calm into the family,
Yeah.
right? So I think that that's exciting. And I have mine on just to remind me, hey, use my webe when I'm
Mhm.
by myself,
Right.
sort of setting my intention, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love that piece because I think a lot of times we set a goal, we set an intention, we want to, change something in our lives, whatever. And if we see it all the time, it's more likely to happen. If we just, especially if we never write it down, if we just tell ourselves, "Oh, this is what I want to do," and we don't write it down somewhere where we can see it, or then it's very easy to be distracted and on to other things, and 3 months down the road, go, "Oh, what was I going to do?"
Exactly.
But having that visual where you could see it, not just for yourself, but also, you know, in that confrontational moment, it's I would assume, having not done it myself, but I can just see myself envisioning like that conversation that I'm having with my 14-year-old, and it's getting heated, and just if I just hold my arm up, it's like, oh wait, okay, versus me trying
Right.
to verbally change, her mind or her
Right.
thought process.
Right. Right. It's very hard to be verbal when you're dysregulated.
Yeah,
So as you're getting really triggered, it's just the visual cue with an agreement around what that means is going
yeah,
to go much further than what you can get out verbally.
right.
So I find that kids really enjoy that, but even adults, like me and my wife, both wear them,
Mhm.
and we'll hold them up for each other.
Yeah,
And it's much softer than what can come out of my mouth sometimes.
right, right. So as we close up, so is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like the people to know?
Yeah, I would love for them to give it a try. Um, a lot of people, it's one thing actually I think is important is that people mistake this for a spirometer that they give out in the
Hmm.
hospitals, where you
Right,
you you want to suck in to try and fill up your lungs, and the ball goes up when you suck in. It's actually the
right.
opposite. This is when you're prolonged exhalation. It slows the breath, whereas
Yeah,
that's a big, fast, deep breath. So I want to make sure some people will say, "Oh, this already exists. It's a spirometer,"
right.
and it's the opposite of that actually.
Yeah,
I think that's important to know. There's nothing really like this on the market right now, and it makes such a difference. Especially, if you just show up and commit to using it, do an experiment on yourself
right.
with your family, and get their buy-in. You don't want to use it as a punitive tool. You know,
Hmm.
you're
Yeah,
upset. You need to use it. It's really
right.
a collaboration of, hey, I think this is going to feel better in our bodies. Would you be open to giving it a try and telling me how you feel afterwards?
Yeah.
And it's that energy. And it's not, like I said, it's not a pacifier that you give your kids. It's not a pill,
Mhm.
right? It's an adjunct to supporting and collaborating with your kids, not a
Yeah,
replacement for it.
right. Well, and I think you make a good point in that it's also something that I would imagine you don't the first time you do it, you don't want to do it in the highest heated argument you've had,
Right.
right? Because that's while it may be effective, it's not necessarily the time to introduce it.
Exactly. Right. That proactive introduction is going to go a long way.
Yeah,
Right. You don't wait for the big fight to be like, oh, by the way, here's the box. Let's open it. Right.
right.
You want to have this open. You want to have tried it.
Yeah.
We love doing fire drills in our family where
Hmm.
we'll pretend to be upset.
Yeah,
I want to help them. This is actually a fun thing that I do with my kids where I'll pretend to be upset to make sure they sort of get trained to hold their bracelet up to let me know. And then
right.
I'll be, oh, thank you very much. And I'll use it.
Yeah,
That we start building, like you said, this new muscle, this new neural pathway that
right.
doesn't currently exist in the family dynamic.
Yeah,
And it's really fun. So,
yeah,
and then afterwards, I'll be like, "Oh, did you guys believe me that I was really upset?" And they'll be like, sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no. I'm not always
yeah.
a great actor, I guess. But
but that's good. And I think that's hugely important. Just like, I mean, you mentioned fire drill, just like you should be practicing fire drills in your house just to get out of the house and make sure that you're safe. And so,
Right.
like it's the same type of thing. It's like use it when it's not an extreme emergency so that you can understand that it will work and it does help. And it's so when it becomes an emergency,
Exactly.
it's easier to jump on board.
It's right. It's second nature.
Yeah.
And we also have on the website, which we're excited about, we do family coaching.
Mhm.
So helping families with, we call it collaborative, non-permissive parenting. So it's collaborative and non-permissive parenting style. And that's really fun. I really enjoy doing that with families. And
Yeah.
then we also have a Dear Weeby column where you can write in
Mhm.
if you have some issue or challenge. And we have every week we respond to one and post it. And that we call, instead of anybody who's remembers Dear Abby, but
Right.
we call it Dear Weeby,
Nice.
and have a little column around different parenting challenges.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of support tools and parent resources that are all geared towards helping take care of your children
Yeah.
in a way that feels really wonderful to everybody.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And I went through the website and I was, I would say pleasantly surprised, but having, worked with you before on an episode, I knew like what to expect, that you were going to be very thorough and everything was going to, and there is a ton of information in there, for people that are looking for those solutions to and to me, it knowing what I've learned about breath work just in general, and like how important it is to be able to regulate yourself, having a tool to be able to do it, like you said, I haven't seen one out
Right.
there that is anywhere near is simple to use and as effective is what y'all have shown it to be. So I can't tell people enough like that this is going to be something that I think is going to be very beneficial for more than just kids, adult. It's going to be for anybody that's dealing with stresses of life, which is everybody.
Exactly. Well, I am hopeful and I really appreciate your support, Jerry.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.